Scorning all treacherous feud and deadly strife, the dark stiletto and the murderous knife, we boast a science sprung from manly pride, linked with true courage and health allied. A noble pastime void of vain pretense, the good old English art of self-defense.
Hey folks, it's Chris Dyer with the Martial Alchemy channel, and today we are starting a new chapter in our series on old school boxing. Let's take a look at it. Okay, so we are talking about the Handbook of Boxing, a wonderful title from 1840 by Owen Swift. Now, we have talked about Owen Swift once before in our video on Savate. This is the same man who killed people in his boxing matches and was forced to flee to France in order to lay low for a while before he made his way back to England. Now, Owen Swift, did he actually write this book, or was it attributed to him? Who knows? But the book at least is credited to Owen Swift. And it's got some really, really interesting stuff. Let's talk about some of the history and some of the interesting content, and then we'll get at some of the actual lessons in our next videos. Okay, so this time period is kind of the next step from what we've been covering. The historic events first. Let's cover some of the important ones. First, William Henry Harrison is elected President of the United States in this year. The steamship, the Lexington, was sunk and killed 150 people, so that was a very big tragedy of the time period. The first photograph studio was opened in New York City. The first postage stamp was introduced in Europe, which kind of changed the way that we do trade. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were married. And lastly, the Union Act, which united the northern and southern regions of Canada to make the province of Canada into one united nation. So these are all important events that happened in this year, a very interesting and important time. But now let's take a look at boxing and how it fits into this time frame. Okay, so this manual starts out much like some of the other ones that we've seen, where it's a sort of argument of why we should do boxing. And this is nothing new that we haven't seen before. The argument that typically comes into play is people are going to get into arguments. Boxing is a way of saving people from more deadly things, that you're not dueling with knives or swords, that if you get into a conflict with someone, you have a means of sorting things out that's less deadly, less lethal, and that leads to all kinds of other problems, like people going to the gallows or getting hung for murder, when it could just be, people roughing each other up. He then goes into an article by a man, Barber Beaumont of Middlesex, a magistrate from Middlesex, a letter that he wrote in 1829. And this is a lengthy article, but it kind of perfectly illustrates why people should be studying boxing, why the state should promote boxing, really. And some of the arguments that they make, again, common, we've seen this sort of thing before, but the argument that's made is look at some of the less civilized, lower class people. Their northern neighbors, they point to Ireland, Scotland, places like that, or the US, where they're completely barbarous, and if you get into a fight there, you're more likely to be stabbed, curb stomped, so if you get thrown down the ground, they're going to kick your head in until you pass out, die, that there's eye gouging, that they don't have a rule set, so people just do whatever they can and just murder each other left and right. And so the argument that is made here is that if we teach people boxing, if we promote boxing, if they learn the rule sets, people will just naturally fall into that because we've trained them basically to do that. It also makes a really, really interesting cultural argument in this letter, that if we expect again, he uses the phrase lower class people to take every issue, if they get into a conflict, every time they get into a beef with each other, we expect them to take that to a magistrate. We expect them to take this to court. It's never going to happen. They don't have the time, they don't have the money to deal with that. So they're going to end up getting to a conflict. They're going to end up, eventually it's going to be physical. And so instead of stabbing each other or doing who knows what, shooting each other, whatever it happens to be, they at least now have an alternative. And so this is a really, really common, and I don't like getting into political things, but it is a really valid argument that can be made that if you have a sort of a pressure valve, if you give them something to do besides murder each other, what's the chance of them doing worse things? Anyway, hi, this is Chris Dyer with the Martial Alchemy channel, and if you're enjoying this content, we have some great news. We now have a video for sale. The link is in the description below. It is titled The Old School Boxing Method of Self-Defense. And it's a compilation of our favorite techniques from our popular series, Old School Boxing. A link is in the description below. Now back to the content. Doing worse things. Anyway, the next part we're going to get into some of the analysis of the style, and then the next videos will cover the actual techniques. Okay, so for this last part of this video, we're going to talk about an analysis of old school and new school. So in 1840, he talks about the old school of boxing. So your Mendoza, your Humphreys, all the stuff that we've covered so far, their boxing guards, their stances, their way of moving, the chopper. And he specifically says that the half-armed strikes, so you block and return, that we've covered so far, they're less likely to work in the new school of boxing, given the way that the strikes are being thrown. So we're going to get into detail of this in the next couple videos covering this manual. But the new school he describes as the stances are going to be different. I'll post an image of the comparison. Stances are obviously going to be different, and the big thing that they talk about is the arms darting out from the shoulder. So instead of being further out here and you're stepping in, we're now back into more traditional or a modern boxing stance, and you're focusing on generating power and force in a straight line fashion like a dart from the shoulder. So you're striking out in this direction. We'll see how this looks in the next couple of videos. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you like, subscribe, share, all that fun stuff. Leave a comment below, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.